Okay, yeah, of course that was Morse code. It's a lot of fun, and I wanted to kind of show you a little bit here about the history and the mechanics of Morse code. And the message that I just said to you guys was, hello, my name is Dwayne, and I'm happy to be here. So again, that's what I told you in the Morse code key there. Basically, I'm going to start out by describing each of these three keys. I have three here, and they're different. They function differently. And to start out with this one was invented, it's called a hand key. It was invented in 1844. And basically the shape is unchanged since that time. But of course the first models were made of brass and wood, and of course this is chrome. So the appearance is different, but the basic shape is the same as from 1844. And this is the kind of key that was used back then in the Gold Rush period, later part of the Gold Rush, and President Lincoln telegraphers used a key that looked like this, of brass and wood. This key was invented in 1904, and it's semi-automatic. The dots are made automatically. But the dashes, you have to make each one yourself. So again, it's semi-automatic. This was used in ships at sea, used a key like this, and also newspaper offices back in the early 1900s, past 1904, used a key like this, semi-automatic. An interesting story about this key, the manufacturer of the key, the inventor of the key in 1904, Horace Martin, he started the Vibroplex company to make these keys. And what's interesting is that business is still in business today. They're still making brand new keys like this over 110 years later. So he invented the key, and he started a company to make the keys in 1905, and they're still in business, still making keys to sell to people. This key is a totally automatic key. It was invented in the 1960s, and it's totally electronic and very, very easy, very little effort to use to use it. The dots are made by this paddle. You can vary the speed, you can go slower. And the dashes are on this paddle. Now I believe I will go to the banner here and explain each of the pictures that I have. This first picture is Mr. Morse, and you can read the description of him briefly here in the script up here, but I believe this picture was, I'm guessing, is probably in the 1850s. He was an older man then. And I saw a documentary about Mr. Morse, and I wanted to briefly explain something the documentarian said about him. He had to go away on a business trip one time, and it was quite a ways away, so he was gone for several weeks. And of course his wife was there at home, and that's all that, it was just his wife and him living at home. And his wife got sick. She got very ill, and she got so sick that she died. And he wasn't able to be there. He wanted really to be there to say goodbye to his wife before she died. He wanted to be there, of course. But the messages were so slow back in those days that it took several days to get to him, and by the time he got the message, she had passed away. And that really bothered him. It really bothered him that the messages were so slow that he couldn't get back to his wife in time. So that's what started him thinking about the Morse code and how to speed up messages. And the documentarian was saying that it's interesting to note that if he had been able to get back in time to say goodbye to his wife, we might not have Facebook right now. We might not have the internet right now. Possibly not cell phones, because Morse code started the whole area of instant communication. I don't know if that would be true, but it's interesting at least to consider. Let's see, this picture is taken in June of 1864, And it shows a battlefield at Petersburg, Virginia. There was a siege there that lasted several months in the Civil War. And this covered wagon has Morse code equipment inside because President Lincoln communicated by Morse code to his generals in the Civil War. That's how they talked, was by Morse code. He didn't do it personally, but he had his telegraphers. There were several telegraphers in the United States Military Telegraph Corps. Actually, over 6.5 million telegrams were sent in the Civil War by the Union Army alone. So that's a lot of messages that were sent back and forth. This picture is taken in the 1930s. A young lady at her radio station, and you can see the Morse code key here. So she was talking to somebody over the radio in Morse code in the 1930s. Picture taken in 1909, a young man at his primitive radio station back then. And President Lincoln, of course, he loved the Morse code. He could spend hours listening to Morse code. Actually, he did. He would go every day, and sometimes over all night long, he'd go to the telegraph office, which was next door to the White House. And he would sit. Actually, he had a desk in the telegraph office, and he wrote his first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation in the telegraph office at his desk. And actually, I think personally the Emancipation Proclamation was the most important speech ever written and said, because it tells everybody that everyone is free and equal and important. Okay, this picture here, every other year, I believe it's an odd-numbered year, there's a worldwide competition called the High-Speed Telegraphy Competition. And teams of people meet in a different city every other year and compete to be the best telegrapher in the world. And this is the American team, of course, in 2011. And I wanted to show you Cody. It's interesting because he's just a high school boy, and here he is on the American team to try to usually it's the Eastern Europeans who win because they seem to take Morse code more seriously than we do, and they use it more than we do. So they usually win, but this year one of the Americans won one of the categories. This picture, this photograph, well, it's not a photograph, it's a actual telegram written and sent in 1868. And again, it's an actual telegram that I laminated. I wanted to mention I have another photograph here. This is a picture taken in 1915 in Sacramento. It was taken in Sacramento, and it shows a telegraph messenger boy, they're called. And in the latter half of the 1800s and the first half of the 1900s, Western Union was very, very commonly a big company to send telegrams back then, and they had thousands of offices across the country and world. And so they would need somebody to take the message that they'd get over the telegraph wire and take it to the recipient's house or office or whatever. So they used telegraph messenger boys. And they gave them bicycles, and so they, most of the time they had a bicycle, and they would get paid so many cents per mile to deliver the telegram from the Western Union to the recipient. This is, again, in Sacramento. This picture is a picture in 1865 in Norfolk, Virginia, and it shows the United States Military Telegraph Corps. And all these covered wagons are telegraph equipment inside. It's just a wagon train. This book, an interesting book. It was first written in 1907. They made several reprints, and I have, of course, one of the later reprints. But David Homer Bates, he was the author, and he was one of the telegraphers for President Lincoln in the Civil War. And so when 1907 came, he wrote a book about his experiences, Lincoln in the telegraph office. It's an interesting book. It's kind of dry sometimes, but it sure tells a lot of history about how Lincoln used the telegraph to win the Civil War. Okay, let's see. Here, oh heavens. This picture is a picture of my acquaintance. He's a former astronaut, as you can see. His name's Richard Garriott, and he knows Morse code. That's why I know him, because he knows Morse code. And I wrote him an email one day, and I said, would you be willing to compose a message to children that I talk to about Morse code and a personal message written just for them? He said, sure, I'd be happy to. So he sent me an audio message in Morse code, and I'll play it a little bit later here in the presentation. Also, there is the United States Navy. The Navy still teaches Morse code at Pensacola Naval Air Station. And they teach Morse code to people who are training to be spies in the military. And they have to know Morse code because our enemies still use Morse code over the shortwave radio bands. And so we have to know the Morse code in order to decipher some of their messages. So again, I asked him, I found out who the instructor was, and I sent him an email. And I asked him if he would write a message in Morse code to the students that I talked to at my workshops. And he said, sure, I'd be happy to. So here's the letter. First of all, he sent me an email. I will read it real quick. This is the email that the instructor sent. Hello, everyone. I won't give the names because of privacy, but hello, everyone. This is CTR, and CTR from Information Warfare Training Command, Corey Station in Pensacola, Florida. We are Morse code instructors in the U.S. Navy. We want to thank you for your interest in Morse code. It takes a well-trained ear and sharp mind to translate Morse code. We practice daily to keep our skills tuned for future missions. Our students typically have 2 months to learn Morse code and then graduate our course. They start from scratch. Some students have never heard or know what Morse code is. What does that mean for you? You can learn Morse just like our Navy sailors, maybe faster. In the U.S. Navy, we don't allow ourselves to use words like can't. Instead, we find ways to make every mission a success. Sometimes it's difficult, but we persevere and complete our missions despite these difficulties. There is nothing that can stop us, and there's nothing that can stop you. Continue to work hard, and there's nothing that you cannot achieve. We thank you for your support and wish you the best and good luck to you all. So that's his written message, and also he sent a message again in Morse code. I will play that in just a bit here. This is my amateur radio station that I use every day. I just wanted to show it to you briefly. This is what I use to talk to people actually around the world in Morse code. When I was 13 years old, I talked to Antarctica, a scientist down at McMurdo Station in Antarctica back 54 years ago now, I guess. Anyway, of course it's changed a lot, but this is the radios that I use. I have 2 of them. And basically, it's over the shortwave radio band. I just call CQ. I'm not putting out any power, so there's no power going out. Just to show you, demonstrate. Call CQ, seeking someone to talk to over shortwave. And then I give my call sign. Everybody has a different call sign. And so I wait for somebody to answer, and if somebody around the world wanted to talk to me, you'd hear their call sign through the speakers here. Basically, that's okay. Now I guess I will play the audio messages, and then of course I'll translate what they said. The first message is from the Navy Morse code instructor that again he sent to me in an email in audio MP4 format. Okay. What he said was, adversity makes for rough waters, but a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. I will never quit. I will persevere and thrive on adversity. If knocked down, I will get back up every time. The Navy SEAL. So that's what he told you guys. And here's the second message. It's from the former astronaut, Mr. Garriott. Let's see. Okay, he said, greetings students. My father was the first astronaut to operate amateur radio from space. 9 years ago, on the 25th anniversary, I operated television from space. What will you do? ? And so that was his message. Hi kids. Period. I am Bill. And I want you to grow up and do good, period. 73s, which means goodbye, is another word for goodbye, 73s. So that was his message. And Bill is a federal judge in San Francisco. And he is the judge that is responsible for any lawsuit involving Facebook or Google or Uber or Twitter or Amazon. So he presides over the court. Basically, if you're interested at all in this, it's a lot of fun. It's something maybe you should consider investigating. Again, there's a couple websites that would help you a lot. The first website is called the CW Operators Club. C and W is another shorthand for Morse code. So their website is cwops.org. And they would help you a lot to learn Morse code. They actually have a mentoring program that you can complete online, and they have a mentor that is assigned to help you learn it. And the second website I wanted to give is the National Association for Amateur Radio. And their website is arrl.org. So they would help you also. Okay, I'm going to close with one last message, and I thank you so much I wanted to briefly end by saying that hopefully this video is not copyrighted, and I wanted you to feel free to copy it and distribute it as you like to other people, because it's a wholesome, fun activity, and it's also challenging. So I hope as many people as possible can at least consider it. That's what I'm hoping for, is something to consider. Here's my ending message. I said, please have fun in life, but remember to be safe, kind, and caring also. So that's my advice. Okay, I'm all done here. Thank you so much.